The Book of Judges Uncensored, Episode 9. Yesterday we started discussing the story of Shimshon, and I wanted to go back to a few points that we spoke about yesterday and clarify them a little bit better. The first thing one of the things we spoke about with Shimshon was there's a story when he goes to marry a woman, a Philistine woman from Timnah, right? So on his way there, it says that...
Wait, Shimshon, the guy with the long hair?
Yeah, that's Shimshon with the guy with the long hair. It says that when he was on his way to Timnah to go marry her, so if you look closely at the pasuk, it says, and this is in Perek Yud Daled, pasuk Hey. So it says, "Vayered Shimshon va'aviv v'imay Timnasa." Shimshon and his father and his mother went to Timnah, and then as he was going, vayavo ad karmei Timnasa, they went up to the vineyards of Timnah, and then there was a lion that came towards Shimshon, seemingly to attack him, right? And then we said this whole story that he was able to defeat the lion. He ripped it up, and he left the carcass over there on the side of the road, and he didn't tell his parents about it. And then the next time he went back, when he was on his way to marrying the girl from Timnah, so he sees honey inside what's it called? A beehive inside the lion's carcass, and he takes some of the honey and he eats it and he gives it to his parents, etc. But he didn't tell them where he got the honey from, right? So a beehive inside the lion's carcass. Yeah, we spoke about this yesterday at great length. Okay, now if you look closely, it says that Shimshon and his mother and father were going to Timnah, right? And then it says the lion came and it only attacked him. So what happened to his parents? And then if he was going with his parents to Timnah, so then why weren't they aware of this whole story about the lion both times? Like, he was going together with them. So when I was going over this story last night with one of my sons, so I came across another detail that I forgot to mention. That detail is that it says vayavo ad karmei Timnah. So they came up to the vineyard of Timnah, right? So the Mefarshim explain that means that what happened was they split ways. Shimshon and his parents split ways when they got to the vineyard. Shimshon's parents walked through the vineyard to get to Timnah because that's the closest way to get there. But Shimshon himself didn't want to walk through the vineyard because as a Nazir, he's not allowed to drink wine. And we said yesterday, he's also not even allowed to eat grapes. And we said that the whole idea of a Nazir is to distance himself from sin. So Shimshon didn't even want to walk through the vineyard, which might technically be permitted, but he wanted to keep himself away from sin. So instead of going through the vineyard, he went around the vineyard, and then that's when this whole story with the lion happened. So he was going with his parents, but then they sort of split so that he can go around the vineyard, and then he met the lion, right? And then he joined up with his parents again. And then the second journey also, the same thing happened. He split off from his parents to check on this carcass, and he saw the honey over there. And then when he rejoined them, he brought them the honey. Right. So that's a point over here.
What did he carry the honey in?
So there's Chazal tell us. Chazal have this expression that when they talk about a person that a person should try to stay away from sin, so we say lech amrinan l'nizira. We say go sechar, go around. The karma leistikrav, don't come close to the vineyard. So this is like taking that expression to like its literal conclusion of a nazir not actually going through a vineyard. Okay, that's one point that was relevant to yesterday's share. The other point was we spoke about the Gemara in Nedarim on Daf Tes and Aleph, where we said that Shimon HaTzadik didn't want to eat from the sacrifices of any Nazir because he felt that most people who become a Nazir are somewhat insincere and they're only doing it for their self-aggrandization and they weren't doing it with proper intentions. Until he came across the story of the guy who saw a reflection of himself in the river, and that reflection sort of, seeing his own reflection pushed him towards doing a certain Avera, whatever exactly that Avera was, whether it was sexual in nature or idolatrous in nature, but he wanted to do some sort of Avera because he saw his reflection, so he decided he's going to become a Nazir. So the way I explained the Gemara yesterday was that he decided he's going to become a Nazir and his hair is going to get all long and disheveled and he's going to look ugly, and then he won't be swayed towards doing whatever Avera it was. And then all you guys were arguing and saying, "What do you mean? A guy with long hair? Who said that's ugly? And who said that would dissuade him from doing Averas?" So if you look closely in the Gemara, and I looked closely again earlier, it was last night, I looked closely at the Gemara again, so it seems that I said it over a little bit, slightly inaccurate. Really, what it was is he said that he'll become a Nazir, so that way, when he finishes his term of Nazirus, he'll have to cut off all his hair, and then he'll be ugly or whatever. He won't have this physical temptation to do whatever Avera was that he was going to do. It wasn't the fact that he would have long, disheveled hair that would dissuade him, but it would be the fact that he would have to cut off his hair. So that's a slightly different way of reading the Gemara.
Including the payas?
Yeah, including the, I don't remember what the halach is. I know that a Mitzora, when he gets his haircut at the end of his term, he has to get all his haircut, even his payas. I don't remember what the halach is by Nazir. I think that might be the same thing though. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. So it's a different reading of the Gemara. The Gemara wasn't saying that he wanted to get his hair longer. Becoming a Nazir was the means of forcing himself to have to shave off his hair. Fine. Anyways, so what happened yesterday was that he married this lady from Timnah, and he made a bet with a bunch of Philistine guys at the wedding that they wouldn't be able to figure out his riddle. He asked them a riddle about when from the eater comes the food, and from something strong comes something sweet, which refers back to this story with the lion and the beehive inside the lion. And they weren't able to figure it out. They put pressure on his wife, and they were able to get the answer, and basically accused his wife of being unfaithful to him, and he left her.
A bet.
Well, the assumption is, I mean, either it was unfaithful just in terms of the bet, or it was unfaithful in terms of the reason why she revealed the information to him was because she might have been having an affair with one of these guys. And then in the end, he sort of is estranged from her, and he goes off, and he's not with her anymore, and her father marries her off to somebody else. He goes back and he wants to reunite with his wife, but her father had married her off to somebody else, so he gets all upset, and he starts going on a rampage, and then he goes on a few different rampages. Right? What?
He's like really strong, right?
Yes, he's very strong. I don't know. So we have different stories where he fought them. He killed a bunch. He destroyed a lot of the Philistine fields by putting torches on the tails of foxes. What's the plural of fox? Foxen or foxes? Foxes. It's not like ox and oxen, or box and boxen.
I've heard this. Is that taken from that comedian?
It could be. I don't know.
If it's short and shvar, it should be short and shvar.
That's right. So anyway, then there's a whole story where he kills 1,000 Philistines with a donkey's jawbone. Okay. And then he got very thirsty, and Hashem made a nace that he was able to get water. I'm saying in very brief bullet points what we spoke about yesterday. Okay. Now, at the end of yesterday, we said the final pasuk of Parak Tezvav. It says, "Vayishbei des Yisrael b'yimei Plishtim esrim shana," and Shimshon judged the Jewish people in the times of the Plishtim for 20 years. Now, in the formula of the way the other parts of Sefer Shoftim are structured, so this verse would be at the end of every shofet. At the end of every shofet, it sort of sums up who this guy was by saying, "Oh, he judged the Jewish people for such and such amount of years." Right? So by Shimshon, it says it over here, but this is not the end of the story. The story of Shimshon is going to continue. But you see from the fact that the Navi sort of pretends as if it's ending the story over here and saying how many years he was a shofet, that this is a break in the story, and here it's going to go off in a completely different direction. Right? So from here onwards, it's sort of a different story. Okay, so that's Shimshon was the shofet over Klal Yisrael for 20 years. I saw something very interesting in the Maral earlier today. The Yaakov Avinu, when Yaakov Avinu was giving brachas to his 12 sons before he died, so he gave a bracha to Dan, and he said to Dan Yadin Amai Ke'achad Sheftei Yisrael. Dan shall judge his nation like one of the tribes of Israel. Okay? We're going to speak about this more later today, and then probably a lot more even tomorrow in tomorrow's share. But this will be Dan will judge his nation like one of the tribes of Israel. Rashi and Chazal explain that this is a reference to Shimshon. Okay, this is a reference to Shimshon, and we'll get more into the details of exactly how you know it's a reference to Shimshon and in what ways it's talking about Shimshon, but it's a reference to Shimshon. So the Maral explains how do you understand this pasuk? Don Yadin Amai, Don shall judge his nation, meaning Shimshon will be a judge over the Jewish people. Ke'achad Shiftei Yisrael. The Achad over here, the word, see there's a difference between the word Echad and the word Achad. The word Echad means one, like the number one, right? The word Achad means the one, with the definite article, a certain one, like a specific one. So the Maral says that this is a reference to Hashem. Hashem is the quintessential one. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Right? Hashem is the quintessential one. And what it's saying is that Shimshon was a judge over the Jewish people like Hashem. Just like Hashem is a judge, Shimshon was a judge. And this harkens back to what we spoke about yesterday, that the Gemara says that Shimshon is called Shimshon because the name Shimshon comes from the word Shemesh, and Shemesh is either a name for Hashem, or the Gemara in the Maskana says it's a description of Hashem, and so therefore Shimshon is called Shemesh. It says about Hashem, Ki Shemesh U'Magen Hashem Elikim. Hashem is like a Shemesh, like a sun, and a Magen, and like a shield. Right? So Shimshon's name, the Gemara says, Shimshon's name alludes to his connection or his comparison to Hashem. So the Maral explains what that means. He says that when it comes to din, so when you're doing din, there's only one din. There's only one halacha. There can't be multiple dins, because if there's multiple judgments, if there's multiple ways of judging, so then it's not just anymore. It has to be just. There has to be justice. Right? If there's more than one way, if you have, let's say, the same case, right? And the same case comes in front of the judge, and in the first time it comes in front of him, he rules one way, and the second time the exact same sort of case comes, he rules a different way. So it's not just. It's not really justice anymore. It's not a real judgment. He's going like this and like this. There's two. It's not one. It has to be one unified way of judging. So he says that just like when Hashem judges the Jewish people, Hashem has one way of doing it, and justice is something it's never changing. It's always remains the same. So too, Shimshon also he always, when he judged the Jewish people, he also strove to remain in one way of looking at it, without playing favorites or judging like this or judging like that in a more wavy or relativistic way. That's what the Maral says.
What's the pshat in Shiftei Yisrael? Like the God of Shiftei Yisrael?
Let's hold on to that thought for a second. And so the Maral doesn't say this explicitly, but I think that this is the connection to the sun, right? As opposed to the moon. The sun is one constant thing. It's the exact same sun every single day. Right? As opposed to the moon waxes and wanes, so it's like different. Each day the moon looks different, but the sun it doesn't change. Right? So that represents the idea of din that doesn't change. Right? Rachamim is something where it's more pliable, it's more bendable, depending on the situation and depending on who you're talking about and this and that, whatever. You can have rachamim, you can have mercy or clemency. But when it's coming to like the letter of the law doesn't change in that way. So you asked, okay, so how do you understand Ka'achad Shiftei Yisrael? So Ka'achad Shiftei Yisrael means that Hashem is the one who unifies the different tribes of Klal Yisrael. Vayhi Bishurun Melach B'Sasev Roshei Am. There will be in Yeshurun. Yeshurun is another name for Klal Yisrael. Yeshurun is another name for Yisrael. Vayhi Bishurun Melach. There will be a king in Yeshurun B'Sasev Roshei Am, when all of the Roshei Am join together. So when all the Jewish people join together, then that brings out the glory of the Malchus of Hashem. So that's what it means. Hashem is sort of like the flagpole, or the flag that everyone rallies around. All the tribes of Israel rally around Hashem. So that's the Ka'achad Shiftei Yisrael. It's the one thing that unites everyone. Fine. Now I think we're ready to start Perek Tez Zayin. Perek Tez Zayin. Again, we spoke about yesterday how Shimshon had a special bracha with his male organ, and that means that he had a very strong libido and stronger taivas in the sexual realm more than the average person, and that means that he has a lot of potential if he can overcome those taivas, he has a lot of potential to become a very important person and to be a very strong person. As we said yesterday, that Ezu Gibor Kavish Yisrael. So let's see what happens with Shimshon next.
Strong what?
And who is a strong man? Who is a Gibor, strong person? A Kavish Yisrael, a person who conquers his Yetzer Hara. That's what the real strength is. Okay, so let's see what happens with Shimshon. Pasuk says, Parak Design. So it says that Shimshon goes, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Shimshon goes to Gaza. Shimshon goes down to Gaza. Right? You know why we call it, in English we call it Gaza, but in Hebrew it's called Gaza. And you know why that is? So I'll tell you why.
We can't say Azasa.
Right, Azasa means to Gaza. If you add there's a rule in the Hebrew language that if you add a hey to the end of a place name, so then it's the same thing as if you added a lamed to the beginning of it. So we would say like Vayelech Shimshon le'aza. So instead of saying le'aza, it says azasa. Like you have in Chumash, you have like there's li Mitzrayim or Mitzrayim. It means the same thing. So Shimshon goes to so Gaza is so why do we call it Gaza instead of Gaza? So the answer is it comes from the Greek translation of the Torah. So if you would translate, you don't translate proper names of people or places really, right? You sort of try to transliterate it, and the letter ayin.
But you're meant to.
What? Yeah, you don't really you don't translate a name like you have a guy named Baruch, so you're not gonna like, well, I have my friend Baruch, instead of saying like my friend Baruch, I say my friend Blessing, right? Because I'm speaking in English, I'm not speaking in Hebrew, so you don't translate his name, you just call it his name is his name. Right, so if you're translating the Torah and let's say or the Tanakh and it uses the word Azza, right? So if you're translating it to Greek, you're not going to write I don't know, Azza means like the bold place, right? Azza is like bold or daring, right? So you're not going to try that. And he went to Avimelech was the king of Gerar and he lived in the bold place. No, that's not how you do it. You just write Azza in Greek. But the way to transliterate it, the letter ayin, so we pronounce ayin and aleph as if they're pronounced the same, but it's not really true. And ayin is really pronounced something like something like that, which could be possibly transliterated as like a G sound, like like something like that, like it's like like something like in that way, like Gaza, yeah. So that because of that, when they translated the Tanakh, let's say, into Greek, so it got a G sound in the beginning of the name Azza. So because of that, Azza is called Gaza. And you have like Sodom and Gomorrah, which in the Chumash is Sodom the Amorah. But there you have the same thing. The Amorah has the ayin, so the ayin becomes like a G sound. So Sodom and Gomorrah, like Gomorrah, it's like something like that. Yeah, I have it in a few other places also. Okay, so Shimshon goes to Gaza. And he sees there an Isha Zona, which usually means a prostitute. The Radak here, for some reason, says that it means an innkeeper, but most of the commentators understand that it means a prostitute, and in the context, it makes a lot more sense to say that she was a prostitute. And he sees a prostitute woman there, and he has relations with her. Okay? And the people in Gaza find out, hey, Shimshon is here, in our city of Gaza. Right, in the middle of Philistine territory. Gaza, we said before, is one of the 5 Philistine cities. Gaza, Gas, Ekron, Ashdod, and Ashkelon, the 5 Philistine cities, the 5 major Philistine cities. So hey, Shimshon is here, that great Jewish warrior who's been picking off a lot of the Philistine people. So they said, let's wait for him. We'll make a trap. We'll wait the whole night, and in the morning he's probably going to leave the city because the city has a wall around it, and you can't leave the city without walking through the gate of the city. So he's going to have to go through the gate of the city tomorrow morning. So we'll wait the whole night, and then tomorrow morning when he goes to leave the city, we'll go kill him. We'll make a trap and we'll kill him. Right? Okay, so what happens? It says that Shimshon sleeps until Chatzos Halayla, till the middle of the night, and he wakes up in the middle of the night. And interestingly, the Rokach says that this was Leil Pesach, this middle of the night where Shimshon wakes up in the middle of the night. He goes to the gates of the city. He grabs the doors to the gate of the city, right? And he just like lifts them off with his with the bolt that closes it, lifts them off, puts them on his shoulder. This is the gates to the city, and he just walks off with it and goes and brings it to Hebron. Very interesting. Gemara says that the doors to the gate of the city of Gaza were at least 60 amos wide. Okay, the doors to the gates of Gaza were at least 60 amos wide, and okay, the number 60 is usually a number of exaggeration in the Gemara, but what we're saying here is like we're trying to bring out the point that what Shimshon did over here is quite amazing. He just went, like, ripped off the doors of the city in the middle of the night, put them on his shoulder, and left. You know, they were the people of Gaza, the Philistines there, were so sure that he wouldn't be able to get out of the city without having to go through the gate. They decided, we're going to delay doing anything about him till the morning, and then when they open the gates in the morning, we'll capture it. We'll set up a trap and kill him. And they hadn't realized that he's so strong. He just like pick off the door and walk off with it.
Look, if he could do that, there's really nothing that he could do to stop it.
It's true.
Didn't they, like, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but didn't, like, Shimshon at one point, like, pick up two mountains and, like, crush them together?
Yeah, I didn't mention this, but there is a Gemara that says, the pasuk says,
A big Shimshon thing.
from Sarah to Eshtael, and the Gemara says that Sarah and Eshtael are the names of two mountains which Shimshon picked up and smashed together. So yeah, there's such a Gemara. There, now we mentioned it. Fine, so this is one story. He goes to Gaza and he consorts with a prostitute there, and he leaves the city unscathed, even though they were planning against him. So this is the second Philistine woman that Shimshon got involved with. The first one was from yesterday, the lady from Timnah, and now today we have another lady from Gaza. As the Malbim says, that Avera Gereres Avera. There's this concept that when a person does an Avera, so it's going to drag him along and bring him to committing another Avera, and then another Avera, and another Avera. He gets into this vicious cycle of doing the wrong thing until he has to do something to break himself out of this cycle.
The Malbim is Achron or Rishon? Or what is the Malbim?
The Malbim died about 120 years ago.
Okay.
So he is an Achron, but his style and the way a lot of people treat him is as if he lived, hundreds of years ago. It's an interesting phenomenon. Not many people are, distinguished in that way. Not many commentators are distinguished in that way, that they live so recently but are treated as if they lived a long time ago. I think they said from. I think I heard from, what's his name? What's his name? No. Rav Nehemiah Kaplan, who is the son-in-law of Rav David Soloveitchik, he said in the name of Rav Chaim Brisker that the Malbim was written with Ruach HaKodesh, which is quite, that's quite an achievement for something that was for somebody who lived 100 years ago. We're not talking about like a Rishon, but the Malbim is taken very seriously.
Still have Ruach HaKodesh 100 years ago?
I think we still have Ruach HaKodesh now, but there's different degrees of Ruach HaKodesh, and there's different ways that the Ruach HaKodesh manifests itself. I don't know. It's not like a light switch. It's either yes or no. It's more shades of gray. How many shades of gray?
Enough to keep us learning Torah.
Very good. Now, it says that we just had the story of Shimshon consorting with a prostitute in Gaza. Okay. Now the next story is that he falls in love with a woman in Nachal Sorik named Delilah. And the way the pasuk introduces it says Vayhi acharechen, and it was afterwards Vayahav Isha benachal Sorik ushma Delilah, and he loved the woman in Nachal Sorik, and her name was Delilah. So the Malbim says that this connecting phrase Vayhi acharechen, and it was afterwards, suggests that this story of him falling in love with the woman Delilah in Nachal Sorik is connected to him visiting a prostitute in Gaza. So that's where he says this idea of, it must be that they're somehow connected, that Avera Gereres Avera. That he did, and that Shimshon did in Gaza, is connected to what he's gonna, with his whole story with him and Delilah. You guys might be familiar with the story of Shimshon and Delilah, but there is a little known opinion that says that Delilah was actually Jewish. There's such an opinion that Delilah was a Jewish woman, not a Philistine woman. From the Psukim itself, you're not gonna see proof either way, really. But from Chazal, it seems to be that Delilah was actually a Philistine. The Tosefta, the Targum, says that Delilah was Jewish. She was the mother of Micha, a guy who had a pesel, an idol for idolatry. But Rashi, in the story of Pesel Micha, disagrees with that Tosefta, the Targum, and he says no, Delilah was not the mother of Micha. But there is an opinion that says that Delilah was Jewish, but the mainstream opinion is more that Delilah was not Jewish. So yesterday we spoke ba'arichus about the Rambam, who says that all the women that Shimshon was with converted to Judaism. So that was what we spoke about yesterday. So the Rambam says it in plural, but it could be the Rambam was talking about the woman from Timnah and the woman from Gaza, but the woman from Delilah, Delilah maybe he would say was Jewish. The Rambam doesn't explicitly talk about which women was he talking about. He doesn't divide it in that way. So it says in the pasuk that this woman Delilah is from Nachal Sorik. Okay, the word Sorik is spelled Sin Vav Resh Kuf, and Chazal say that the word Sorik, Sin Vav Resh Kuf, is related to the word Sorik or Srak, which is Samach Resh Kuf, which means a barren tree, a non-fruit bearing tree. Ilan Sorik or Ilan Srak is a tree that doesn't give fruits. Bereshis Rabbah, Bamidbar Rabbah, Parsha Tes. It says that at this point, Shimshon is like an Ilan Srak. He's like a non-fruit bearing tree, because we see that he's becoming so accustomed to doing averas and not doing mitzvahs, so he's like a tree that doesn't give fruits. We know that fruits are a remez to the mitzvahs that a tzaddik does. Like we say, tzaddik hatamar yifrach. Right? A tzaddik sprouts like a tamar, like a date tree. He gives off fruit. The deeds that a tzaddik does are the fruits that a tzaddik does. So when a person is not doing mitzvahs or he's doing averas, so he's like a barren tree that's not giving off fruit. That's a Chazal make this exegesis on the word Nachal Sarik. They also say that at this point,
what's the exact definition of exegesis?
I don't know. I once saw a T-shirt that said Jews for exegesis. Drush.
Drush.
Yeah.
Like, a diuk or something.
Yeah, like it's sort of like a diuk. The Medrash also mentions that now that Shimshon is doing his avera threefold, because he had the woman in Timnah and then the woman in Gaza and now Delilah. So he's sinned 3 times. He's like a muad for doing averas. He's like a muad. Like we have like a halacha that an ox, so the first 2 or 3 times that it gores, so it's called a tam. You only have to pay half the damages. But then after the 3rd time or on the 3rd time, yeah, it becomes a muad. It becomes expected to gore, and then we don't give you a break. We make you pay the full damages. We don't say pay half. So now Shimshon, the Medrash says Shimshon is like a muad because he's sinning 3 times. Okay, so what happens with Delilah? So it says that the Sarnei Plishtim, the Plishti noblemen, come to Delilah and they say to her, "We want you to convince Shimshon and find out what is the source of his powers? What's his weak spot? And we want to be able to tie him up and to make him suffer. And we're offering you, each of us is offering you 1,100 silver slime. That's how much we're going to give you. Each of us is going to give you 1,100 silver slime. A sela is a type of currency.
With a couple shekels back when the shekel was worth money, huh?
1,100 sela. That's how much we're offering her. So that's what they offered her, to find out what the source of Shimshon's powers are and reveal it to them so that they can capture Shimshon and he won't be a threat to the Philistines anymore. Okay, now you guys are probably familiar with this story, so we don't have to like really go into the mamish all the details. But 2 points to keep in mind in this story are, as the Radak says, that this story, each episode in this story, didn't happen right after the other. It took a long time for this whole thing to happen. Right? So it's, to us, it seems like obvious and apparent what's happening over here, but to Shimshon, it wasn't so obvious. Otherwise, if you read the story, Shimshon is going to look like an idiot or a naive person that he doesn't realize what's going on. We realize what's going on because the story is presented as one long narrative, but for Shimshon, it was protracted over a long period of time, so it wasn't so obvious what was happening. That's one point. The second point is that it seems, and my friend Arnie Wittenstein points this out, that it seems that throughout this entire period, Shimshon was always getting into fights with Plishtim and just like killing random Plishtim here and there, fighting with them, and them coming and trying to hurt him, and him turning into the Hulk and defeating them and whatever. It was an ongoing thing. Okay, those are 2 points to keep in mind. So Delilah says to Shimshon, she says to him, "Tell me, what is the source of your great powers? If I wanted to, let's say, tie you up or lock you up, right? How would I be able to do that?" It's a very innocent question, right?
Innocent question.
No, in a way it is because the way women are, so women feel like if you reveal to them your vulnerabilities, so then that means that we're so close that you're willing to tell me like your deepest secrets. So like even if she wasn't trying to like figure it out so that she could tell the Plishtim, it's not so far-fetched that she would try to understand him better, try to get his deepest secrets, so that would like sort of build their relationship. She would feel like it's building their relationship. So like you wouldn't, if I was in Shimshon's place, I wouldn't necessarily suspect that she's working with the Plishtim to try to do something to me. Especially if Delilah was Jewish, which again is a minority opinion, but is a valid opinion. If she was a Philistine, then okay, you might be more suspicious, especially in light of yesterday that we had all these. The lesson of yesterday's episode was don't trust the Philistines, because they're not loyal, they're not faithful. Okay, so Shimshon says to her that. Here, let's read it. Shimshon says to her that if you tie me up in 7 ropes that are still wet, that were never dried, so then I'll become weak. I'll be like any other person, and you would be able to defeat me. Okay? So what happens? At some point later on, when Shimshon gets into another fight with the Plishtim, so they come along armed with 7 wet ropes that had never been dried, and they tied him around with it.
Is it ropes?
I'm sorry, 1 second. No, the Philistine noblemen came and they brought Shimshon's. I don't know if it doesn't say that he married her. His girlfriend, let's say, they brought her these 7 ropes, and she tied him around with it, and then they set up a trap, and she would they were doing this like naturally, like in the house, as if they were just playing around or something, and then all of a sudden the policeman would like storm the house, and then she says, the policemen are coming, the policemen are coming. And what does he do? He flexes his muscles, and these ropes just like melt away. Okay, so that showed that that's not the secret to Shimshon's power. Right? So she says, "No, you're making a fool of me. You lied to me. No, really, tell me how is it that you can get bound up?" And again,
believed her after this?
No, again, let's say this happened like 3 or 4 years later. It's like you're not connecting all these events, right? If it was a common thing that Plishtim would come and start a fight with Shimshon, or Shimshon would start a fight with her with Plishtim, so like it happened to be that she put me down to these ropes, and it happens to be that at that moment the Plishtim came. But like, why would you put the 2 and 2 together? Why would he necessarily be so suspicious? So again, he tells her that if you would bind me with brand new ropes that have never been used for anything else. So then again, I would become weak, and I would be like any other person, and I would lose my powers. Okay, so she brought. This time it wasn't the Plishti officers or the Plishti noblemen that brought it to her. She had to do it herself, because the Plishtim were already getting suspicious of her. So she had to bring the ropes herself, and she's very nonchalantly tying him up in a friendly manner or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the Plishtim pop out of nowhere, and she said, "Oh, Shimshon, the Plishtim are coming!" And then again, he just snaps away the ropes and frees himself. So she says, again, what? Why don't you tell me what's going on? What's the real way to tell you? Why are you lying to me? Right? Again, the whole story could be taking years and years. So it's not like he wouldn't necessarily connect these episodes. So he tells her at a different point. He says, if you take 7 locks of my hair, and you put a weaving rod into it, that they use for weaving, like a stick to weave. So then then you'd be able to subdue me. So Shitaka did that. She put this thing in his hair. She put the pegs of the loom in his hair, and Plishtim came. And this time he was actually sleeping. He woke up and he just tore it out of his hair, and he was able to save himself from the Plishtim this time. Okay. This is already getting repetitive, right? But the punchline is always the punchline is always on the 4th one. Right?
Really?
What?
They're usually on the 3rd.
Okay, so she says to him, please, really tell me, how could you claim that you love me if you're not even revealing to me what's deep in your heart and what are the sources of your power? You're just making a joke out of me. You're not really confiding in me, and you're not really sharing your deepest vulnerabilities with me. How could you claim that you love me? And it says, that it was when she was tormenting him with her words for many days. She put pressure on him. He felt like he wanted to die. So Rashi says, what does it mean over here? Rashi says that the word vata'altzehu, it means she pushed him, or she pressured him. Ve'ein lo dimyon. It doesn't have any counterpart in all of Tanakh. This shorish doesn't really appear in the rest of Tanakh. So it's a unique word, somewhat unique word. What?
I think that's
What?
don't worry about it.
Okay. So what he's thinking about is the Gemara that explains how she put pressure on Shimshon. The Gemara says, what? The Gemara says that the way she would put pressure on him to reveal the information about where his weak spot is was that while they were engaged in intimacy, in the heat of the moment, in the throes of passion, as they were about to reach the climax of their engagement, she would suddenly slip out from underneath him, and she would ask him again, what's the source of your power? Under the pressure of that moment, to try to get him to say what's the source of his power. And he felt like he wanted to die, because it was so much, it was a lot of pressure on him. And as the pasuk tells us, eventually he told us what was in his heart, and he told her the reason Moira lo ola al reishi, a razor had never been put upon my head. Ki nazir lekimani mi beten imi, for I am a nazir of Hashem from the stomach of my mother. Im gulachti, if I would get a haircut, v'sar mimeni koichi, then my powers would be removed from me, my strength would be removed from me. V'chalisi, and I would become sick. V'yisi kechol hadam, or relatively compared to his great strength now, he would be considered weak and sickly. V'hayisi kechol hadam, I'll be like any person. So now he revealed his weak spot, his secret. Vatera Delilah ki higidla eskolibay. Delilah realized, okay, this is the real deal. This is the truth, right? How did she realize it? How did she know that this time he wasn't lying? Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times, fool me 4 times. Shame on who?
What do you say in the town?
how did she realize? How did
Well, I
she
mean,
know? It says
she
here
did
that
have
she.
really long hair.
What?
Her she had really long hair. Maybe she was like, whoa, that actually is an
Oh, so
It seems like she was just taking any information she got and reporting.
No, but here the pasuk says like, and she saw that he actually said the truth, like as if it's like, okay, now she really took this.
differently than before.
The simplest way I think is to say what you're saying, that like he didn't just tell her like, oh, if you do like some random thing, so they'll make me weak. No, he gave like a logical explanation to it. It's like, oh, because I'm a nazir, so that's why I have this karkas, that's why I have the long hair. It's like, now it makes a little bit more sense. He offered a rationalization besides just saying, what you could do to weaken me. He said why it works. Okay, that's one way. The Gemara in Mesechus Sarta and Daf Tesamid Beis gives two other ways of understanding how she knew that it was the truth. One way, the Gemara says, because the divrei emes nikaron, when you're confronted with the truth, it's clear, it's obvious that that's the truth. That's an interesting idea. When you see the truth, you know that you're seeing the truth. The other idea the Gemara says is because he said in his explanation, because I am a nazir of Hashem from the stomach of my mother. He said the phrase nazir elikim. I'm saying elikim, but he didn't say elikim. He said hello, and then him, right? He said Hashem's name, and she reasoned that I know Shimshon. I know he's a big tzaddik, and he wouldn't say Hashem's name for no reason unless it was true. So from the fact that he said Nazir Kimani, that's how she knew it was true. That's what the Gemara says. So what does she do? She sends a secret message to her Philistine handlers, and she tells them, okay, this time he told me the truth. He told me how to weaken him, and the Philistines came over to the house with the money, and they're ready to pay her up, and they're ready to take down Shimshon. So what does she do? She puts him to sleep on her lap. Yeah. On her knees or whatever. It says al birkeha. Article translated as on her knees. Well, I guess knees and lap is really the same thing anyways, right? Okay, so she puts him to sleep on her lap, and she called over these Philistine guys, and they gave him a haircut while he was sleeping.
Now, halachically, if the Nazir gets a haircut against his will, then he's not then he has to start over as Nazir, so it's considered breaking a Nazir?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I think so.
I would think not.
Yeah?
I mean, it's like, if it's something that he's done, like, I mean...
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. First of all, you don't have to restart your Naziris unless you become Tameh. If you violate the other halachas of Naziris, you did an Isser, but it doesn't mess up your Naziris. Only if you become Tameh. The question is, if you become Tameh ba'onis, do you have to restart? And I think the halacha is that yes, because L'maisa you became Tameh. Does that answer your question, Shlomi?
No. I'm just wondering if this is considered a violation on his part of the Nazir's, the fact that they cut it. Meaning, so I thought you could bring evidence from whether or not you would have to restart Naziris, but apparently it's not relevant anyways, because the person who
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah, no. Haircutting and drinking wine doesn't make you restart the Naziris.
Here, them cutting his hair, is that making him not a Nazir technically? Or is this like, I don't know.
Okay, so let's see a little bit more in the story, and then we're going to consider exactly how the mechanics of how some of these things over here are working. Okay, so it says that they shaved off 7 locks of his head, and then they were able to subdue him. And she screams out, "Oh, Shimshon, the police are here!" And he suddenly wakes up from his sleep, and he's like, "Okay, I'm going to go out and fight them like always." But then he didn't realize that Ki Hashem sar me'olav, Hashem had departed away from him. Hashem left him. He didn't have that extra strength. He wasn't able to turn into the Hulk again. Okay, and the police grabbed him, and they poked out his eyes. It's quite brutal. They poked out his eyes, and they brought him down to Gaza, and they locked him up in chains, and they had him working as a grinding over there in the jail. Like, they make you work when you're in jail. So what they had him doing was, because he's, I guess, still a strong guy in some ways, they had him grinding with the millstone. Okay. So there's a few different questions over here. First of all, what's like some sort of kryptonite? Shimshon has like kryptonite, like if you cut his hair so he loses his powers, like Superman. Like the kryptonite affects him.
I don't think it was actually much to do with his hair, though.
Yeah, what do you want to say this?
You mentioned Hashem departed from.
Yeah. So it doesn't really, the way we understand the story when we're little kids, we understand it like sort of simplistically, that like, well, if he has long hair, he has these extra powers, and when he doesn't have long hair, he loses it. But it doesn't really have to do with the long hair. It really has to do with, is Hashem with him or is Hashem not with him?
Why does it mention his hair grew back a little?
Well, it's like, we'll get to that. So, I don't know. There's a medrash that says in Bamidbar Rabbah Parsha Daled, it says that Al Shatime Atzmei Begoya He Garmolei La'isa Giloch, because he defiled himself by living with a non-Jewish woman, which seems to be talking about Delilah. So again, like that's Chazal's opinion that she was not Jewish, as opposed to Tosefta the Targum that she was Jewish. So because he defiled himself by living with a Goya, so she ended up cutting off his hair. And that was sort of the beginning of his downfall. But is it the hair itself gives him the power, or is it sort of what Shlomo was trying to get to, like keeping the halachas, keep following the commandments of Hashem? That's what has the power. Being a tzaddik, or now you have Hashem with you, so there you have the power. When you don't have Hashem with you, then you lose the power.
But how was he a tzaddik the first 3 times?
What?
How was he a tzaddik the first 3 times then?
What do you mean?
He was still with Delilah. He
was still with her. So that could be because even when a person is doing averas, so Hashem doesn't always punish him right away. Hashem gives him time to do tshuva, right? So all the other times that he still had his strength, even if he was doing the wrong thing, because Hashem is giving him a chance to do tshuva, and now he's sort of he revealed his secret. And maybe Shlomo is right. Maybe by telling her his secret, he's sort of inviting her to actually cut off his hair. So in a way, he himself was in a way leading to the violation of his nazirus. Maybe that's how to look at it. I don't know. It's something to think about.
Interesting.
So it says that they poked out his eyes. We'll speak more about the significance of poking out his eyes towards the end of the shir, but the Gemara talks about this actually. The Gemara, that's actually a Mishnah. There's a famous concept in Judaism called midah keneged midah. When Hashem offers a punishment to somebody, so one of the classical ways that Hashem gives a punishment is in accordance with what the sin was, right? The punishment is going to have some semblance to sin. It's a way of teaching us like what did I do wrong? It's like the punishment is not there just to like get revenge. The punishment is there to try to help correct you. So if it's trying to help correct you, so one of the helpful ways of helping you fix yourself is if you tell me what's wrong. So one of the mechanisms that Hashem does is when He punishes somebody, He'll punish them in a way that sort of alludes to what they did wrong, right? So the Mishnah brings in Masechah Sota brings a whole bunch of examples of this concept of midah keneged midah. Now this is the source. You ever heard of midah keneged midah? This is the source of midah keneged midah. So the Mishnah says, Shimshon halach achar einov. Shimshon went after his eyes. Lefikach nikru plishim es einov. Therefore, the Philistines poked out his eyes. Right? That's the midah keneged midah. He went after his eyes. The Gemara explains, right, because all the way back in the first woman that he married, the woman from Timnah. So he says to his father, "Kachli ki hi yishara be'enai," because she is straight in my eyes. Right? And if you look actually very closely in the psukim, so you'll see that he uses that expression when he talks about the woman from Timnah, and also he says when he spoke to her or to her family. It says over there in Perek Yudalid, Pasuk Zayin, it says Tishar be'enei Shimshon, and it was right in the eyes of Shimshon. And then again, it says in what we read earlier today, in the beginning of Pasuk in Perek Tes Zayin, when he goes to the prostitute in Gaza, it says Vayar Sham Isha Zena. There he saw a woman, a Zona woman. So again, it has to do with seeing. Right? And so all these cases, the common denominator is him seeing, him using his eyes. So he used his eyes for something wrong. So his punishment is that his eyes get gouged out. The Gemara also says. The Gemara also says that Rabbi Omer, Tchilas kilkuloi ba'aza, lefikach loka ba'aza. The beginning of Shimshon messing up was in Gaza, with what we started with today, with him meeting the Zona in Gaza, in the city of Gaza. Therefore, he was smitten in the city of Gaza, and we're going to see that in the end, Shimshon is going to die in the city of Gaza, right? So he messed up, started messing up in Gaza, therefore he gets smitten in the city of Gaza. And the Gemara asks a question. He started messing up in Gaza. So the Gemara asks, really? He started messing up in Gaza? Doesn't it say in the Pasuk, Vayered Shimshon Timnasa? Right, the first Philistine woman that he had relations with was from Timnah. So what do you mean that he started messing up in Gaza? He started messing up in Timnah. So the Gemara says no. The first woman that he married, for some reason the Gemara doesn't find that so problematic. But the beginning of his getting messed up was in Gaza. So Rashi explains. It's interesting, Rashi, because what Rashi does is he completely ignores the issue of is she Jewish or not Jewish? Any of these women, were they Jewish or not Jewish? And Rashi says, the first woman, the woman from Timnah, even though she was a Philistine, it wasn't such a problem. Rashi says, Lav kilkul hu kulei. It wasn't so bad. So he wasn't messing up so bad because he married her. He did it. The Yerushalmi and Saita says it was derech nisuin. It had the outer trappings of a wedding, right? A marriage. It looked like a regular formal relationship. But we saw yesterday there was there was a party like they do when you get married. You make a party, with the best man. So that wasn't so bad. But when it came to Gaza, so that was bala derech znus, because she was a prostitute and he was just hiring her to use her as a prostitute. So that's where Shimshon started messing up. He started messing up in Gaza, so he gets punished in Gaza. This whatever he did in Timnah, Rashi says it was bad, but it wasn't so bad. So Rashi says. Okay. So it says that they captured Shimshon, and they made him vayhi teichin bebeis hasurim, and he was grinding in the jail. Right? They made him grinding grain while he was working in jail. Right? He was the grinding guy. Chazal tell us in the Saga Sota Daf Yud Amud Aleph, it says Amar Rabbi Yochanan Ein tchina ela lashon avera. The word tchina, grinding, really mean grinding. It's an allusion to avera, to sexual misdeeds. Right? Melamed shekol echad ve'echad hevi lo yisishta lebeis hasurim kidei shetesaber himenu. This means that all the Philistine guys brought their wives to the jail in order for Shimshon to impregnate their wives.
What? That's crazy.
Right? As we saw yesterday, that the Philistine people were not so loyal or faithful to marriage, to the institute of marriage as a whole, and they were engaged in wife swapping. Like so, the Medrash said that just like their vineyards are klayim, so too their daughters are also klayim. That means that they're built of forbidden mixtures. So you see that the Philistines are sort of, loose about these type of things. So they all brought their wives to Shimshon, who was in jail, and they wanted their wives to become pregnant from Shimshon so that they could have, nice strong kids, like Shimshon is.
But they're not. It's not their kids.
but again, what the Philistines were doing was that their wives were anyways hanging out being with other guys. Right?
Yeah, but
so
it's like-
anyways,
I mean,
what were their kids weren't really their kids.
No, but okay.
That's
fine.
the
but
point.
Like, no.
So if your wife is going to cheat on you with some guy, you at least want him to be a strong guy so that the kid.
No, there's a difference because.
That's how they look at
There's a
it.
difference because it's one thing if he's like cheating with somebody else in your tribe. So it's like, okay, if she's cheating with somebody else in your tribe, it's like, okay, fine.
Yeah, but you're missing the point that they want him exactly because he's strong.
Right.
'Cause they want their child to get his genes.
Yeah, but
It's like
a different.
it's like
a
if
different-
you think of it in modern terms, yeah. So it's like if you're looking for a sperm donor, right? So you want like The Rock to be like your sperm donor, right? You want like a big strong guy. What?
I don't know if I'd want The Rock to be honest.
Well, not you, but I'm saying like if you were a Philistine woman, it's like that's the type of guy you would be looking for, right? So,
Okay,
the Gemara says that they brought their wives to. סליחה, יש פה שיעור. אפשר לדבר בחוץ. בקיצור, שמשון.
I could have done it earlier, but it was
Shimshon, they bring their wives to Shimshon in jail so that he can impregnate their wives. Yeah. Question: the Gemara doesn't say what happened. What happened? Did he impregnate them? What did he do with these women? Did they force him to like impregnate them? Could you force him? The Gemara says there's a concept ein kisho el midas. A man can only have an erection if his mind is in it. Right? If he wants to, he can have it. You can't force a guy, put a gun to his head and say, okay, you are going to sleep with this person. Unless he wants to do it, he's not going to be able to do it. It just physically doesn't work. I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, and they
What?
did have.
What's his question?
He's saying that now that there's such a thing as Viagra, so maybe the concept of Ein Kisha El Midas is not necessarily
They
true,
had their own
because you can
stuff
force a
about
man you can physically force a man to have an erection even if his mind is not there.
But not only that, there's also another thing that you could do. I think you know.
I don't know. I don't want to know what you're talking about.
But you
Wait,
do
no.
know.
But
I don't know.
the
You
thing
do
is,
know.
they did used to have what's it called?
Is that what?
They used to have things to make them.
Like aphrodisiacs for men.
Yes, aphrodisiacs.
Yeah, there's such a thing. That yain amoni. There's a medrash that says that
Maybe they used that.
that when the women of Midian came to try to get the Jewish people to do Baal Pa'or, so they gave the men yain amoni, Ammonite wine, which makes them very aroused. And then there's also a medrash that says that the waters of Shittim turns people on, and so like
Maybe they
the
use
Jews.
that.
The Jews strayed with the Benos Moab by Shittim, so that's because the waters of Shittim made them go off. I don't know. It's an interesting question. So you have maybe even in these things there's an element of your mind has to be there also. I don't know. Now,
There's another way, but it's very gross.
okay. Calm down. There is a tradition that says that one of these women that was brought to Shimshon was Orpah. We mentioned Orpah 2 days ago in the story of Rus. So Rus and Orpah were both daughters-in-law of Naomi, and they both wanted to go with Naomi back to Eretz Yisrael from Eretz Moav. And in the end, Rus goes with Naomi, and Orpah doesn't end up going with Naomi. Orpah ends up staying in Moav. Right? And Chazal tell us that night that Orpah stayed in Moav, so she was involved in some sort of orgy with 100 men and one dog, and from that Goliath was born. There's such a chazal. So there's another tradition that's also in the Tosefta the Targum, and Rav Shalom Shabazi and the Chasam Sofer bring this down also, that there's a tradition that says that Orpah actually was one of these women that was with Shimshon when he was in jail, and from that she became pregnant and Goliath was born. So the question exactly about...
So this is all before King...
Yeah, this is all before King David, yeah.
Before any king.
So this is Goliath. So this is Goliath is born, from... According to this tradition, he was born from Shimshon and Orpah.
Wait, but the Beis HaMikdash then isn't even around.
What?
No,
This is the time of the Mishkan, the time of Mishkan Shiloh. Yeah. So it's like, Goliath is like, the big show, or like Andre the Giant, like this huge, strong fellow that no one was able to defeat him until David Melech was able to came along to defeat him. But Chazal in Bamidbar Rabbah in Bamidbar Rabbah Parsha Chaf Beis compare Goliath to Shimshon, and they point out, Chazal say that there were two Giborim Sh'amdu Ba'olam. There were two very strong people who came in the world. Goliath from Ummas Ha'olam, from the Gentiles, and Shimshon amongst the Jewish people, and both of them were Nevdim min Ha'olam. Both of them were just completely destroyed from the world. Okay, so let's go. Let's continue with the story of Shimshon. What happens next? So it says that after they had captured Shimshon, so the Philistine noblemen decided, now that we've captured Shimshon, we're going to make a big party, we're going to make a holiday, we're going to bring sacrifices to our gods, and we're going to parade Shimshon around in our idolatrous temple, and we're going to show everybody how we've succeeded and how we've eliminated this threat from the Jews, and we've really subdued the Jews and conquered them and put them under our dominion. So they gathered in the temple of Dagon. Dagon is the Philistine god. Some say that the word Dagon is related to the word dag, fish, because the idol was in the form of a fish, or because they worshipped the Pisces, which is the mazel of Dagim, associated with the month of Adar. Some say that the form of the idol of Dagon was half person, half fish. So it wasn't completely a fish, it was like some sort of merm person.
Top half was bottom half fish. Or was it like split down?
I don't remember. I have to look. I don't remember if they talk about it. I speak about it. If they speak about it, it's in my book. But God versus Gods, Judaism in the Age of Idolatry, Mosaic Press 2018, for sale for only 85 shekel.
On Amazon?
On Amazon, it's like $27. The cheapest seller. Some say that Dagon was in the form of a mouse. Some academic scholars want to say that Dagon is related to the word Dagan, which is grain, and it was like some sort of god of like fertility of grain and growth and stuff like that. Okay. There's also in Ugaritic was a city in modern day Lebanon where they found a lot of mythological writings. So in their mythological Canaanite writings, it says that Baal, the Canaanite god Baal, was a son of Dagon. So like there's, they're all mixed in with each other. Anyway, so they bring Shimshon to make this sacrifice for Dagon, and they're all gathered up, and they say, Nasan Eloheinu biadenu es oivenu, our God put in our hands our enemy, ve'es machriv artzenu, and the one who's destroyed our land, v'asher hirbe es chalaleinu, and the one who had proliferated our dead bodies. And they were all happy, and they started playing with Shimshon, and they're making a mockery of him. The poor strong Shimshon with his eyes gouged out. And what did? They put him in between these two pillars in the temple of Dagon. They stood him up in between the two pillars. He was chained down with the pillars. Right? And now, one thing that we forgot to mention is that the pasuk very nonchalantly mentions that Shimshon's hair started growing back a little bit. Okay. Now, according to what we said before, the hair is not the make it or break it. Whether he has the hair or he doesn't have the hair, that's not the main source of Shimshon's power. Right? It's not just the hair, right? It's not all about the hair. You tell that to Donald Trump, right? It's not all about the hair.
But he started gaining his strength.
What? Is what?
He started gaining his strength back.
So he's in this temple, and he's chained up to the two pillars that are holding up the whole thing. And it's tons of people over here. It says that there were 3,000 people on the roof, and just on the roof watching it. And Chazal in Bereshis Rabbah, Parshat Tzadik Ches, say that it wasn't 3,000 people on the roof. It was 3,000 people on the edge of the roof. That if you were looking up from down, you could see 3,000 people. But on the roof, there were even more than 3,000 people behind them. Right? And then in the courtyard itself, there were tons and tons of people. Right? And Shimshon realizes this is his chance to make his last stand. Vayikra Shimshon el Hashem vayomer. Shimshon called out to Hashem and he said, Hashem Elokim, Hashem, O Hashem the God, Zachreinina, remember me, V'chazkenina, and strengthen me, Achapam hazeh, just this one time, Achapam hazeh Elokim, this one time, O Hashem, V'nakma nikam achas, b'shtei einayim miplishim, and I'll get with one act of revenge, I will avenge both my eyes from what the Plishtim did to me. Famous song like, what's his name? What's Shlomi saying from Dov Shurn? My wife for some reason doesn't like that song because of what's about to happen to Shimshon, I guess. So it's not such a happy song. Shimshon is basically going on a kamikaze mission.
Yeah.
He realizes that he can take down a lot of Plishti people if he brings down the pillars of this temple, and the whole building collapses. So he'll die, but tons of Plishtim will die as well. So he says the famous last words: "Tamus nafshi im Plishtim." My soul will die with the Plishtim. The Gemara uses this as like a person who's willing to mess over somebody else, even if it's at his own expense. So the Gemara calls it Tamas Nafshi im Plishtim. Let my soul die with the Plishtim. Like I don't care that I'm messing myself over as long as I screw you over also, right? No, that's what the expression means.
Right.
And it says that he leaned with his force and he knocked down the pillar and the entire building collapsed, and there were more people that died in this one incident than Shimshon had killed in his entire life. So Shimshon created this massacre over here by giving up his life for Hashem. Now, when Shimshon says Zachreinina, the Medrash says, and it's also the Gemara actually says this also. What's he saying? Hashem, remember me. Remember me, like remember you, the guy who slept with like the 3 Philistine women, the guy who's like not doing the right thing. Like what's the remember me? So the Gemara and the Medrash say that when he says Zachreinina, he means remember me, that all 20 years that I was a judge over the Jewish people, I never inconvenienced anybody. I never took advantage of my leadership position and asked somebody to like, oh, could you get me my stick, my walking stick? Can you bring it from here to here? Just do me a favor. I never took advantage of my position to push people into doing things for me. I didn't do it for myself. I was sort of altruistic in that way. So that's what it means. Zachreinina, remember that zchus that I have, that I never took advantage of my position as the shofet. And Hashem, it seems, agreed with that. And Hashem gave him the power. He turned into the Hulk again. He was able to bring down these 2 pillars, brought down the whole building, and he killed a bunch of Philistine people with him. And then it says that afterwards his brothers and his father came and they took out his body and they buried him between Sarah and Eshtael in his family's, in the cemetery where his family is buried. And it says the last words are V'hu shafat es Yisrael esrim shana, and Shimshon judged the Jewish people for 20 years. So it's funny because at the end of Parak Tezvav we already said that Shimshon judged the Jewish people for 20 years, and now here at the end of it, we said usually that happens at the end of the story where it says how many years he judged, and then there was in the middle of the story, and now here at the end of the story again it says he judged the Jewish people for 20 years. So what's up with that? So Chazal tell us that it's to allude to the fact that there were 2 sets of 20 years that Shimshon brought salvation to the Jewish people. There were the 20 years where he was alive, where he was beating up Plishtim and helping out the Jews and helping them assert their.
He was 20?
No, that's all we said. We didn't say that. We said that he was judged for 20 years. So the 20 years that he was alive as let's say functioning as the judge, as the leader, so he was in this position. But then after he died, so it says that the fear of Shimshon was upon the Philistines. They were so scared that maybe there's going to be another Jewish guy like Shimshon who's also very strong, that for 20 years after Shimshon died, the Plishtim didn't start up with the Jewish people so much. So it says that the Jews were under Plishti rule for 40 years. So 20 of those years was under Shimshon's leadership, and 20 of those years was after Shimshon died. But for 20 years after he died, they were still scared of the Jews that they didn't mess too much with them. What were you saying?
Reminds me of Baruch Marzel, who was just banned from the Knesset. he always says that his good friend, the guy who went on the shooting spree.
Baruch Goldstein, yeah.
His good friend Baruch Goldstein, when he said he claims that after he killed all the Muslims in Mars Bill, says for 4 years after, there's not a single attack on a Jew in February. That's what he claims.
Could be. So that's Shimshon, our 13th judge. What time is it?
It's way past.
Way past?
Yeah, it's 4:53.
Okay, so we're going to stop over here.
What time was it meant to end?
You don't want to know.
It was 4:30, wasn't it?
So we're going to stop over here, and we're going to speak more about Shimshon and the connection between Shimshon and David and the role of what Shimshon could have been and how Shimshon represents Malchus. We're going to speak about that tomorrow. And then tomorrow, tomorrow's our final day. We're going to speak about the judges after Shimshon, Eli Kohen, Shmuel Navi, very briefly.
Wait, how do you get the strength of Shimon?
1 second.
I mean Shimshon.
And then afterwards we'll give some allusions to different shoftim that we find in the Torah in Yaakov Avinu's brachas that he gave to the different tribes. So we find hints to Gidon, to Yiftach, to Shimshon, like we mentioned earlier, Dan, Yadi, and Amai. We'll explain that a little bit more at length, and at Devorah. So we'll
Shimshon's
try to
from
do
Dan.
all of that tomorrow. Yeah, Shimshon is from Shevet Dan. Okay. Thank you for coming and thank you for staying.
Gentlemen, one announcement.